Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Somos Moss, the official podcast of Somos Moss NM and your source for the latest news and notes on New Mexico United and the New Mexico Runners. Joining me tonight, special guest, Harry Austin at, you guys know him on Twitter, YouTube, Reddit, wherever as Ramacall. Jacob and Earl are not here tonight. We do want to, of course, pass along our well wishes to Earl and his family. They suffered a death in the family yesterday, so Earl will not be joining us this week, and Jacob is out. He's got a sick kid, so hopefully, Jacob and his kid get back to full health, and Earl and his family, they're in our thoughts and our prayers as they deal with the loss. They've had kind of a rough year. Earl's family has, so Earl's going to take some time. I don't know if he's going to be back next week yet or not, but that's where we're at. But I'm super excited to have Harry on the show. Harry, of course, was in town this past weekend for New Mexico United and San Antonio FC. And Harry, first of all, thank you for coming on. I know you told Jacob the other night that you really want to come on the show this week. Plans changed, last minute with Jacob.
Very last minute.
Yeah. Jacob literally texted me about 15 minutes ago saying that he couldn't make it. And Earl let us know earlier today that he might not make it, and then confirmed a little while ago. So, so first of all, obviously, appreciate you came up. How was the trip up? Did you enjoy New Mexico? I know you got to eat a couple local eats around town. What did you think?
Oh, I enjoyed it. Getting there's not a lot in between.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie to you. I made the mistake of not stopping at the bathroom in Roswell and pretty much didn't see a bathroom until, the Texas border going on 380. But outside of that, it was pretty nice. Like I said here, weather was nice, a little windy.
Yeah.
A little chilly from coming from San Antonio. But no, like I said here, as far as, being in Albuquerque, like I said here, it was a fun time. Stopped at the tailgate for a little bit. The curse was real nice. Unfortunately, I didn't get to meet up with the Black Diamonds. Unfortunately, they were on the other side, and I didn't realize that. Met up with you out at some field on the west side of town.
Yeah.
Because AJ wanted to go play soccer, obviously. 11 hours in the car, and then hotel room, not a lot of space to run around, so we bounced around the fields as the local area kids were playing games, and a lot of fun. You and your kids came out and got to meet officially for the first time in person, and then we met up later on at Dillon's,
Dillon's,
pizza.
Yes.
AJ really liked the pizza, and I thought the game was a success. I'm assuming your view of the game is probably a little bit different.
Yeah, it certainly is, and we'll get into that, obviously. So you follow the show. You've been on a few times. I do typically have one burning question for the guys, and I got to ask, and I was going to ask this of them too. If you had to pick one meal, not a recipe, I should say, that you had to eat every day, what would it be?
For me,
yeah,
hamburger and potatoes. Probably, I like mashed potatoes, but to me, I got it. I know this is probably wrong of me, and probably why I'm a little bit overweight. I like my red meat, so and steak. In our household is for special occasions, but give me some hamburger, and you can have tacos and burgers and all sorts of stuff with that.
I don't disagree with you at all there. I grew up in a vegetarian household, at least after my parents split up. And so my mom went the vegetarian route. And so anytime I went to my grandmother's or to my dad's, they always had some sort of meat. Like my dad would do a pot roast about every other Sunday, and so it was always a special thing to go and do that.
I grew up in the exact opposite, because we grew up on a farm in western Colorado. So we'd butcher a cow, go hunting for deer, had some pigs every once in a while. So meat was never short, and that's probably why I'm a meat and potatoes guy. It's just how I was raised, and like I said here, But yeah, it's I'll eat a salad, before they're here, but the whole vegetarian lifestyle, that is something that I don't think I could do personally.
Oh, no.
I'm sure if I had to, I would, if it was a matter, hey, you either do this or you're not here tomorrow.
Yeah.
It would take that type of decision for me to be able to give up my meats, unfortunately.
Oh no, I completely, I get that. Like I couldn't do it. My mom, she would cook meat for us, but she was always very much vegetarian, like borderline. Like she tried to serve us like tofu and things like that. But no, I enjoy meat. But something I've started making recently, I've made it a few times. I'll get a couple chicken breasts, throw them in the crock pot, throw in a container of Bueno red chili. Get the hot, throw that in there. Throw in like cup 1 or 2 cups of like mozzarella cheese and just cook it for like 8 hours. And also put in some of the Buffalo Wild Wings garlic Parmesan wing sauce. Just throw all that in there, cook it down for about 8 hours, and cook some pasta and get it all up in there. It's absolutely fantastic. It's super easy. Throw it together, and I could eat that for quite a while. So, but I will never say no to a good steak. I'll tell you that right now. But yeah, it was great seeing you and AJ coming out. And we mentioned we met up over on the west side. My son had a football game over at C&M, and then we met up at Ventana Ranch at the park right there. And yeah, so that park there is actually home to a number of different leagues. So like I-9 plays over there, West Side United plays over there, and I didn't realize that they were going to be that busy on that particular Saturday. And I know there's tennis courts out there and stuff too. And so that side of town gets pretty busy. And it's, we were kind of talking a little bit. Albuquerque is just so spread out.
Right. Like San Antonio, so wide.
And it takes a while to get across town from there to here. But yeah, glad you guys made the trip up. Glad you guys enjoyed the pizza. And it looked like you got the Duke City.
Yes. With the chicken and green chilies.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, really good. Dion's, of course, local favorite. We had talked about going out to the Frontier, but I know that after the match, I had to run and get my kids. Jacob got a ride back with a buddy of his who came into town as well, and so.
And AJ was ready to go. So
yeah, I don't doubt that for a minute. Like I really don't.
It's like you got the tailgate, you got to have pizza. Now it's time.
Yeah. No, I get it. So yeah, next time we'll hit up Frontier and this will be it's right there at the UNM campus. And so Jacob and I will sometimes go over there and hang out and discuss things. And so it's a great place. It's really good food, and they've got like the best cinnamon rolls in the world. You'll have to try one of those. But yeah, I mean, let's jump right
next year, right? Well, yeah, depending on playoffs. But,
depending on playoffs, yeah.
That'll be next year, most likely for that.
Yeah, playoffs, and if the Isotopes will let us use the park for the postseason, so that's gonna be a fun thing to see come the offseason.
Maybe the Isotopes won't be playing though.
That is true. That is
in October, and typically baseball is over by that point.
Yeah, I think the issue we ran into is just the way the brackets came out in 2019 and 2020. Well, 2020 obviously COVID, we couldn't play here anyway, but 2019 the way the bracket played out.
You guys were on the road, yeah.
Yeah, we were on the road. So, but yeah, I mean, San Antonio obviously came up. We talked a little bit before the match about how we felt. Jacob and I both said that we felt pretty good. We gave our predictions on the show last week. I believe Earl and I both said 2-0. I think Jacob said 2-1. And I feel like we had a lot of things coming in that we were positive about, despite the 2 losses to Phoenix. From your perspective, coming into that match, what were you looking for out of San Antonio, who we've talked about kind of have been grinding out wins? They're not real goal heavy this year. They're doing what has to be done.
So I would have been happy with the tie, because whenever we've gone to New Mexico's won by 2 or more goals every time. And the games, let's be honest, the games have been blitzed pretty early by New Mexico, with the huge crowd behind them. So I think for San Antonio going in, it was about keeping New Mexico off the board early, because I think if New Mexico gets on the board early, then San Antonio's got to chase the game a little bit more, which opens them up, which, as we saw during the game, defensively, they're probably one of the elite units, I think, in USL, as a league. Just on how they get back. Offensively, they're still probably a little bit challenged. I think that there are more goals that's going to be coming. But, when you're playing, if you look at who San Antonio started, it's a very defensive heavy lineup. You got Collier and Dillon, the two tall forwards, but Manley, Maloney, Abu, PC or Victor Jao, Shannon Gomez. Shannon's probably the third attacking threat on that, and he's a fullback. The three in the middle, Connor Maloney, was a fullback last year. I stepped up to the DM. Abu and PC are all defensive midfielders primarily. That they do have the ability to go forward and attack, but they're not like Christian Pirano or Jose Gallegos, along those lines. That is that attacking threat. So I think for San Antonio to get, I don't want to say criticized, but even in like the USL Power rankings, they're like, well, their XG is not good. But when you really look at the numbers, and John from USL Tactics has started to point this out, San Antonio is one of those teams that they give up a lot of shots, but are they really quality shots? It's how many clearances does San Antonio get per game? How many blocks and stuff like that? So, which I think is the key. Which is the key, and we saw this in this match here, is when you do get those opportunities, and New Mexico, especially in the first half, had a couple opportunities where they had the ability, they had the shots to be able to put in, but they couldn't finish for various reasons, and unfortunately for New Mexico, they paid for it. San Antonio got the one opportunity with the PK, and I know it was right on the line. And I'm sure we'll kind of address that down the road, but to me, I would have been happy with the 0-0 draw, because I think for us, to have, that was the third match in a week, and going 120 minutes against Austin FC on Wednesday. I think San Antonio FC would have took a 0-0 draw, but they were fortunate enough to escape with a 1-0 win.
Yeah, you talk about how San Antonio came into the match, and I was looking back, and I think it was San Antonio's sixth match since like April 2nd. Mm-hmm. So like a lot of miles on those legs here throughout the month, and obviously it's not going to get any easier, going into the round of 32 in the U.S. Open Cup eventually. But yeah, you talk about you mentioned United getting chances early, and we did have some, like, I want to say we had some moments where it really looked like we were putting it threats in on goal. But when you look at the stats for the entire first half, USL credit us with 3 shots, only one of which was on target. And, I felt like, we just left a lot on the table. But
that's the issue. That's been the issue of New Mexico. Is them being able to finish. I know we kind of talked about it, Jacob and I did, that San Antonio may have benefited with Nico Brett not starting. He did come on in the 60th minute, but I think at that point they were down a goal, right? When was the PK?
No, I think it was still 0-0 at that point, because the PK was in the
67th, but right at that time. So he hadn't really had a huge presence at that point. But to me, like I said here, when I was looking at so I can find the statistics here. Yeah, in the first half, you had 3 shots. We had 4. Each had a shot on target. But yeah, it was one of those games where I thought New Mexico had the better opportunities in the first half. Neither team finished as well. Obviously, when you look at the shots on target, but
Yeah, it was one of those matches, and it's something that it just I don't know, just and to me, we've talked about it, and I don't know how much I don't know how much you pay attention to Facebook or like the fan groups and things like that. And I know like there's been a lot of discussion surrounding New Mexico United about a couple different players. One of which is Chris Wehan. One, a lot of people saying, "Well, why isn't Suggs starting? Why isn't so and so starting? Why isn't Nico Brett starting?" It's like, well, Nico Brett just played 190 minutes in 4 days. So, I get that. Josh Suggs he picked up a knock after playing against Phoenix on the weekend. Why some of the changes, what's going on with Chris Wehan has been the biggest question mark all season, especially in terms of our midfield. And so you could see moments, and like one of the biggest spots for us all match long was Christian Nava. And Nava was just I was third. I've seen him in person play several times now, and every time I see him step out there, he is unbelievable with what he can do with the ball.
He's a special kid, yeah.
Yeah, he is. His footwork is absolutely incredible. The movements he can make, and so you saw some things out of him. Where it's like, okay, it got me thinking. What if we had Christian, Nico, and like Preston all playing together? You got Christian and Preston out on the wings. You got Nico, playing that 9. Because he's not a true. He's not a 10. He's certainly not a true 10, and so. But the problem is getting that ball up there, getting that connection going forward. And just Chris Wehan missed so many opportunities to do that. But I will say that he did have a couple opportunities in this match where we saw him drive forward and push the play, which he hasn't really been doing this season. And we need that out of him. That's what he needs to be doing.
I have your answer on why it felt, even though the shots didn't feel like it here.
Mm-hmm.
And the key for San Antonio, first half alone, they had 23 clearances to 5 for, and it was about a 56-44% ball possession.
Yeah.
But I think that's why it felt like, especially from a New Mexico viewpoint of, we were always pushing, you were. The issue is that final third let you down, but, and this is where the San Antonio defense comes in, kind of that, borrow an American football term, the bend don't break defense.
Right.
Is that, they had 7 interceptions and 23 clearances, but that 23 clearances to me is the big reason on why it felt like New Mexico dominated that first half. And I think everybody thought that New Mexico had the better chances until you look at the numbers. It goes by that clearances. San Antonio had 40 clearances for the entire match compared to 13 for New Mexico. That's a huge gap. That tells you, and it was 56-44 possession. San Antonio actually outshot, looking at the stats, outshot New Mexico 12-11, 4 on target for San Antonio, 2, for New Mexico. It's that, and I know this is something that you mentioned, the connection from the midfield to the forwards, or along those lines, that final connection in that final third is what at least in this game is what let down New Mexico. And I think part of that has to do with how San Antonio sets up, because they set up very defensively. They set up with the 3 center backs and the 2 wing backs and the two DMs, defensive midfielders. So when you get down there, that box is crowded. And that's what the issue is, and Phoenix is the only one that's been able to break us down with 2 goals towards the end of the half. For that here, but outside of that, it's San Antonio hasn't gave up a lot of goals. And I knew this match was going to be low scoring, but I still thought New Mexico, most likely would have got one, at home. I'm not sure when the last time New Mexico was shut out at home. I'm assuming it's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while, because they were riding a 17 match unbeaten streak at home. I know that I'd have to go back. I'd have to double check the scores. I want to say we had a 0-0 in there at some point, but
probably against El Paso.
Probably. But yeah, no, it's just one of those things where you look at the stats, and this is something that we do have to. I honestly didn't even realize that clearance stat, but you talk about it. You talk about the 3-5-2 that San Antonio put out there on Saturday, and you would think that United would have some sort of idea how to break that down, because that's exactly what we did all of last season. But in that defensive set, it's so hard to break it down. Like you said, once the defending team gets so compact in the box, you put 8-9 guys in that defensive third, it's going to be really hard to break that down. For me, it's one of those things where you either need to get the ball side to side, get some movement, get some guys out of position, or just try to play the ball over the top and use your pace to get in behind and make the defenders turn towards goal.
But the problem is San Antonio has the pace on the defense, on the center back lines. At the start of last year, you could have done that, but I think Coach Marcina understood that weakness, because we were getting beat over the top quite a bit with speed. The center backs that San Antonio has are typically tall and quick, for that here. So to me, like I said here, all credit goes to the defense, and I love Matt Cardone. Don't get me wrong. He's a San Antonio legend, especially with the beard. But Jordan Farr, at least at this point, is a different level of goalkeeping, compared to you'd have to probably go back to Diego in 2017, where we've had that top quality goalkeeper as well, which makes it different. Because I was wondering, because New Mexico typically is pretty good at peppering shots from the outside. Especially with the midfield. I think Bruce usually has 2 or 3 a year where they're just bangers, but it didn't seem like they were taking a lot of shots from outside the box and hoping to get either a cheap rebound or something along those lines to be able to get that cheap goal inside the box off a rebound.
So you talk about the last time United was held scoreless at home. You are correct. It was El Paso, July 24th of last year. I had a feeling it was, and then we were also held goalless against Austin Bold in June of last year. But yeah, it was strange, because one of the things we talked about last year ahead of the final match was the size disparity between the San Antonio back 3 or 4 and United's players. Because really, we only have 1 or 2 guys that are listed. I think it's maybe 4 guys now. They're listed at 6'1", and I think 6'1" is pushing it. We were talking about how Justin Portillo is listed as like 5'7" or whatever he's listed at, but he's really not. He's really not that tall. And so, you mentioned Daniel Bruce. We did see a couple shots there in the second half where he did let go from distance. I mean, neither of which were great shots, but I mean, they were close enough to make you go, okay, maybe it'll pull San Antonio out a little bit more and get them to step out of that defensive set they're in, and maybe open some space up inside the area. But it just didn't happen. None of Brucey's shots were close enough to really force San Antonio to step out. And yeah, you look at guys and we have so much pace up top now, pace that we haven't had in the past, at least not since Kevon, and I think Zach has done a pretty good job of employing the pace that we have, and we saw it against Phoenix the other night. Harry Swartz playing the ball over the top to Nico Brett, and Nico split the 2 defenders, got in and got the goal, which I thought was fantastic, and I think we need to see more of that. But yeah, we just could not pull you guys out of that defensive set and make someone, or force you guys into an error in that final third.
So my question is how do you get Nava more playing time? Because from my understanding, that was his first start, correct?
First professional start, yes.
How do you get him more time?
Oh, that's tough.
Because he was, to me, he was that playmaker that you guys need. Now, I would almost like to see him more on Weehan's, spot on the line on the field. And I know Weehan's your captain. but I would almost like to see him there. And then if you had, Brett and Preston up top, I think that gives you a very attacking top three.
Yeah.
But I know Weehan's your captain, and he's a club legend, and along those lines. But to me, how do you get Nava on the pitch more?
For me, it's Christian Nava was clearly the highlight for New Mexico United on Saturday. The most electric player on the field. Like, he was going, toe to toe with some guys that he has a fairly sizable difference with, and it was a lot of fun to see. We've seen him go up against bigger guys before, and you talk, like you said, how do you get him involved? How do you get him into more matches? And it's tough. Like, Sergio Rivas wasn't even in the 18 on Saturday. Josh Suggs is out hurt. And I hate to say that that's going to come down to injuries in order for him to get more starts like that. But I definitely think.
But is Rivas I guess my question is because my issue with New Mexico, and this is from an outsider's view, and like I said, I don't watch them as closely as you guys do. Is the lack of creativity on the attacking side.
Yes.
And I think he's at least from what I've seen this year, he is the one person that I think can help create to, help Nico and help Preston have a little bit more opportunities on there. And I'm not saying Weehan doesn't, but at least for the match against San Antonio, Nava was clearly, the best attacking threat that New Mexico had.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think if I've ever seen him play that more almost like a cam role. I don't know that we've seen him do that way. They typically bring him in and put him either out wide or as like, or as like a center mid, not so as in the cam role, but I think he could do well in that area. If you put Nico and Preston up top and then have Christian kind of drop back a little bit, I think that could be really interesting. And honestly, like, if you did that, I'd want to see more like a 4-4-2 diamond. Have Christian at the top there, maybe put a Sainty or a Zira at the back, for that defensive mid, and then Justin and maybe Sergio or Bees in there to help get that ball help facilitate the ball to Christian, who he drew a lot of attention.
He reminds me of Pirano from a couple of years ago, where he's that smaller guy, but he has a great balance. So he got knocked around, but it's not like he was getting knocked off the ball, and his footwork was incredible.
Yeah.
And to me, you've got to find a way to be able to get his creativity on the pitch more. Now, like I said, I'm not, obviously I don't watch New Mexico as close as you guys do and know the specialties of the others, but at least for that one match, to me, and I know pregame or pre-show here, we were talking about the midfield being able, and I think what we're talking about here is especially with San Antonio getting the clearance, either you go over top, or you've got to have somebody that's creative, that can get that special pass that the normal player can't get.
Yeah.
And I think that's the missing aspect for New Mexico at this point. It goes back to that creativity, and that's been an issue for 2-3 years at this point. We're seeing it with I hate to say this, but we're seeing it with El Paso. With Diego Luna and the offensive side, they've got somebody that can create off the ball and open things up. I think New Mexico's improved from last year, but I don't think that they're at that peak where they need to be as of yet.
It's strange because, and I want to go back real quick. You talk about Christian and how he was in there banging with some guys. I thought it was really funny when they called the foul on him in the second half for banging it. I don't remember who it was who he fouled. I'm like, really? Christian's 98 pounds and he runs into a guy that's twice his size and they call a foul on Christian. I thought it was really funny, but it's going back to last year. Like, first half of the season, absolutely, we were like dreadful first half of the season. Then you bring in Chris Weehan and things drastically open up, and it's just not clicking the same this year. And we keep talking about it, and I thought of his I thought it was funny the other day when the USL Championship had 2 stories on their front page about United, or including United, and Chris Wehan was the focus point of the pictures for United. I'm like, okay, I understand, but like, he's not performing this year, and we keep talking about it, but yeah, something's just missing. It's lacking in there. And I think Sergio Rivas showed us at times last year that he can be creative, that he can force the ball forward and draw attention. We've seen it from Christian Nava now, preseason and into the regular season. Like he's a guy that could be electric in there, and we've seen him. And I don't know if you've seen any of his highlights, but we talk about again his footwork.
Mm-hmm.
He's megged a few guys. He'll make some real interesting little passes and try to, do some real nifty link up play. And you just see like the defenders just lose him at times, and they just lose track of what he's doing. And so, yeah, I would love to see Christian. Like, we've been asking for Christian, since last year to get more time. And I know some folks are wanting to see him earlier season. Of course, we did too, but it's like, okay, do you give him the start against Phoenix? We've got 2 matches against Phoenix, sure, but do you really give him the start in either of those? Because yes, you want him to grow and get those growth opportunities against players who are better than him, but you don't necessarily want to throw him out there for his first career start against Phoenix Rising. So I felt like with the injuries, with the matchup this week, I felt this was a great opportunity. Christian showed out, and like I really want to see more from him. And yeah, maybe it takes keeping guys like Sergio out, putting Wehan on the bench, giving Sainty's a guy that I'm really high on. I would love to see him get more time, and he got the start on Saturday, and unfortunately he didn't really feature a whole lot. He's a kid. He's 19 years old. He's got an incredible leg. He's got some great footballing skills, and so he's another guy I would keep an eye on this year. But yeah, like Nava, he's got to be in there somehow. Put him in that cam, put him out wide, something to get him involved, because he can drive the play.
So here's a question for you. Last 2 losses, just talking the league, not talking about Open Cup. San Antonio and Phoenix. I think the San Antonio hurts because it's a little bit at home, but I think Phoenix and San Antonio, I think, are too excusable. But the 2 matches prior, ties against Orange County at home and ties against the Roots at home. So 3 out of the last 4 have been at home. And then coming up, you guys have Sacramento, and then San Diego coming to town. So 2 more heavyweights, from the West coming in. Thoughts on how New Mexico is kind of defending, the home fort at this point, because that's 3 matches at home without a win. And let's be honest, the USL West is very competitive. Winning at home, unless you're making up the points on the road, is huge. And I know we say it's early in the season, but these points add up, and more important, the first tiebreaker is head-to-head.
Yeah.
So your thoughts on kind of the home performance, for New Mexico at this point?
Yeah, I mean, again, we can still say it's early. We're already a quarter of the way through the season. Some clubs have already played 8 matches. We're there. We're basically a quarter of the way through the season already, and this is something we've talked about a lot: is performance on home versus performance on the road. If you go on the road against really anybody, you pick up a point in El Paso, you pick up a point in San Antonio, you pick up a point in Phoenix, those are considered good results. Now you go out to some of these other clubs. You go out to
Monterey Bay, that type of stuff,
Monterey this year. You go out to Los Dos. Typically you would think that that's going to be a pretty good shot at winning. You against, now that we have the interconference play, you would think going up against some of these Eastern Conference clubs like Charleston, New York, Loudoun, you would think that those would be pretty favorable matchups. But like you said, the Western Conference is hyper competitive this year. We've got more. I think we've got more clubs this year that could potentially be in the race for the playoff spots than we've seen the past 2 years, even with the way the divisions were set up during COVID. United's record at home is still really good overall,
But it's starting to show some cracks. So it's the reason why I'm asking this question, because if you had told me that New Mexico's one win at home, one win at home, two draws
and a loss,
Yeah,
that's
out of 6 matches. Out of 6 matches that you guys have played, 2/3 of them have been at home.
Yeah. No, it's not something that anyone would have ever expected. It's not something that we should be happy with. It's not something that that we want to keep up. And I mean, this is something that goes back even into last year. Giving up those late goals and something that happened last year. We talked to Troy about it a lot. Was the loss of focus, or United just seemed to switch off at times.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that's what's happening this year. I don't see them switching off. I don't see them coming out slow. Now, I will say, we can't. I felt like in the second half on Saturday, San Antonio came out faster. Not necessarily that we were switched off, but San Antonio came out better at the beginning of the second half. But the ends of these matches, like
the Oakland Roots one stands out. Yeah,
Oakland Roots stands out. The one against Orange County stands out too. Late goals is something that's plagued this club for years. And someone made a post on the New Mexico United Nation Facebook page the other day. New coach, same shit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, okay, well, yes, but the way it's happening. Like last year, you saw like a bunch of like little funky like rebounds and deflections off people and things like that. And, I know in which match was it? I want to say, the Phoenix, even the Phoenix match out there. It was just kind of a weird goal where Will Seymour didn't react fast enough. And you saw, I think it was Ford. I'm talking about the cup match. Ford slid over to the near post to try to defend against the end swinger, and Will just didn't react. And I saw people blaming Ford for him. Well, you can't blame Ford for that. That's not on Ford. Great header. Went exactly where it needed to go. But United just I can't quite put my finger on what it is. I think it's just a lot. I think it's just being unlucky a lot of the time, because I think it was I can't remember if it was Orange County or Roots, one of them, but Alex made a fantastic save, and then the ball came back in, and they scored off a header. Like, it's just kind of tough luck sometimes, but it's something that, and Zach has talked about it, they have to be comfortable playing in those positions. They can't stop being aggressive. They can't just, sit back and go, oh, we're up 1-0. They can't be satisfied with 1-0, So it speaks a little bit to the fact that we're not finishing in the offensive third. And then we're just not, I don't think we have enough size in the back, especially to defend in late game pressure situations like that, where you had Roots just pressing and pressing at the end of that match. We just didn't have enough there to clear those balls out, and it's not a slight on any of the guys. And I mean, I'm sure that I know they're giving it everything they can, but it's just the results have to be better. The reaction times have to be better. Getting the ball out has to be better. But yeah, home form has got to improve without a doubt. And it's taking a combination of those things we just talked about. So for you guys, we talked a little bit Saturday when we were over at Dion's talking about the roster changes for San Antonio. And for me so far, watching you guys play, I think Jordan Farr has been the biggest pickup. He came in there in the playoffs last year, had a fantastic run down to the conference finals, and then he's been tremendous for you guys so far this year. Who for you so far has stood out? What is, who's really driving the results so far?
So the interesting thing about Farr is he wasn't even the starter for the first 3 games.
Mm-hmm.
As we had Kristen Bonilla, who came in and then he retired 3 games in. So as far as an addition, we were excited because they announced Tama, and then the following day they announced Bonilla, and we were like, okay, hey, that's going to be our 2 goalkeepers. And then Matt Cardoni came back, and they were like, well, why are we running 3 goalkeepers that are quality number 1s?
Mm-hmm.
Now we see why.
well, is Matt Cardoni really a quality number 1 still?
I think he is. He's not an elite,
okay,
but he had he led us to 2nd place last year.
Mm-hmm.
He was the only goalkeeper we really had on the roster until he got hurt in the second half of the last match, and then Farr came in on an emergency. To me, like I said, there's 2 things that have impressed me. Number 1, Justin Dillon, the improvement that he's made from year 1 to year 2 is, in San Antonio has been night and day. The only match we've lost is when he hasn't been in play. With that here, we just had Collier up top and we were injured with the other forwards. When he's played, San Antonio is 6-0. They haven't lost yet. The other, Fabian Garcia, number 4, a center back, and then Tainer. Technically, he signed, although he came in kind of like Weehan last year. He came in from Sacramento towards the end of the year and stayed through there. But it's all about the defense and that back line, because that 3 in the back allows San Antonio to do the pressure that they want, and then they've got the speed and creativity to be able to cover. But we saw last year with having big or slow center backs for the system that San Antonio does, and they just got tore up. Having these guys here that are big, physical, and quick makes a huge difference. And I think that's the back 4 of Garcia, Kamari, Tainer, and Farr. And Manley's came in from RGV. He's played in the back line, but now they've got him more in the fullback and slide Maloney over. It's good luck trying to score against San Antonio. And I think the biggest thing that you can see, San Antonio is 4-0 on the road. Wins at Orange County, wins at New Mexico, which they hadn't done. Who else was the other one? At RGV, which they're starting to get their act together because they just beat Sacramento. And then who was the other one? Oh, they beat Los Dos 2-1.
Mm-hmm.
But for San Antonio, like I said, they've been able to get 4 wins on the road, which we talk about, hey, getting a tie is a good result. Picking up 12 points, 12 out of 12 points on the road, especially in places like Orange County and New Mexico, are not easy to do.
Right. Yeah. No. Yeah. That's why opening week, for us down in El Paso, or second week down in El Paso, was such a huge win.
Yes.
Going to places like this, where, because clubs like San Antonio, New Mexico, really, most of these Western Conference clubs, especially those who've been in contention for the past 4 or 5 years, they're very good at home.
Correct.
They're tough to beat. And so, anytime you go out there, if you like, a win on the road is just that much better than anything else. So real quick, we're talking about Matt Cardoni. I want to do a little would you rather. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Talk about how you said Matt Cardoni is a number 1. So Matt Cardoni or Vitiello.
Who's he play for?
Sacramento.
I like Matt. Let me see Sacramento's numbers. I'm assuming you're leaning towards Sacramento, right?
In this case, I would, yeah, because they've run out 2 different keepers so far this year.
Yeah, I'll give the edge to Sacramento.
Okay. Would you go Cardoni or Colin Miller from RGV?
San Antonio.
Okay.
And that's even over Tyler Derrick, I think, is an MLS quality goalkeeper.
Yeah.
I think if he's playing, I think it's a little bit different. But Colin Miller, I'd still go with Cardoni.
I'd have to look and see how many starts Tyler's had this year. I think he's only had one. I could be wrong.
Has he had one? I know he just
think
came
so.
back.
I know he's credited with a few saves. I think he's had one start. I'd have to look that up. All right. Matt Cardoni or Caldwell from Colorado Springs?
A lot depends on the defense in front of him. That's the issue. Caldwell doesn't impress me yet. You know, I'm assuming you're leaning Caldwell.
And this I would probably lean Cardoni, but it's close. It's close.
Yeah. Now, what I say about Matt's a number one goalkeeper. He's an above average goalkeeper for USL.
Okay.
So
would you take him
I'm
over?
not saying he's top 5 or even top 10 in the league.
Okay.
But I do think he's in the top half of the league. I think Jordan Farr is probably a top 10 in the league at this point, maybe even top 5 so far on this year.
Okay. I was kind of curious. Sense? Yeah, I was kind of curious, like where you rated Cardoni at this point, you know, because
Cardoni, like that was, and I know it's kind of sacrilegious, you know, being in San Antonio, where he's from, San Antonio. In my opinion, that he was on last year's playoff team. Last year's playoff team was stacked with MLS experience all over the pitch, with the exception of goalkeeper. So, you know, now, to me, Matt's not going to win you a game, but he's not going to cost you a game, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You know, I absolutely understand. I was just kind of curious, you know, because he didn't necessarily have a strong second half last season.
But if you look at his numbers, they were good.
Yeah, no, absolutely. His numbers were good.
But it's and I'll just compare this with with the two San Antonio goalkeepers. If you look at the numbers from Jordan Farr with Indy 11 and the poor defense, the numbers look horrible. And if you look at Matt Cardoni's numbers, they look great. But I think if you look at the just the ability and the quality, I think most everybody saw, hey, Jordan Farr, you know, is going to be the number one when they signed, and Christian Bonilla was there. I think one aspect that we don't that a lot of goalkeepers don't get discussed about is the distribution. And I think that's a huge part where Farr and Bonilla have over Cardoni, and part of the reason why I think that they were looking to kind of make a move off of Cardoni is because of the ability to get the ball out. And to me, I wonder if that's maybe something, you know, with New Mexico being able to get that ball out quicker and faster for that here. So question for you, Mizell, 2 starts, and I know it's 2 tough opponents. He hasn't played poorly, but your thoughts on his performance? And it's hard because he's had he left last year, right?
Yeah, he was gone for all
of
last year.
So he was off a year, and by off, I mean not getting actual minutes.
Yeah.
Obviously he's getting probably higher quality practice and stuff going against MLS, but you know, game minutes matter as we've seen with Steph and with Man City.
Yeah.
You know, that you got to get some playing action, which is why he's down there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I completely agree with that. And, you know, you look at the options, and I know that when Cody wasn't out. So I don't know if you went back, and I don't know if you heard our Open Cup post match that Audrey and I did. We found out prior to that match that Alex had gotten hurt from Peter. You know, club had not put it out there yet. Peter was just walking around the track and was talking to us, and so we posited a question. You know, does New Mexico United bring in a keeper, and if so, who? I threw out the name of Cody. I even brought it up to Peter, and he didn't say. Peter basically, wouldn't that be great? You know, if Cody came back, you know. So I floated it out there, and then I kind of, you know, reached out to the club. I said, hey, is Cody coming back? You know, what are the chances of this? And then, they did the teaser. I'm like, I knew exactly who it was. So I texted, the club. I said, hey, did I will Cody into existence? And the response was, I do not know what you're talking about. Which clearly confirmed what I knew. But so the signing was interesting because Casey Gasson, local keeper for the Mexico Runners, and Colorado, the MASL2 club up there. I can't remember the name off the top of my head. He was kind of upset because he felt like it was a slap in the face to Ford Parker, who had a great season last year in League One. Came over this year, did well in his Open Cup match, got thrown into the El Paso match last minute in the preseason, and did well there as well. But for me, bringing Cody in, I think was necessary, and I don't think it's any disrespect to Ford, because Cody is a known quantity. Yes, Ford did well League One. That's not to discount his ability or his talent, because I think he can be a top half championship caliber keeper. Cody, I think, has done really well. His distribution is very good. I feel like he's made some really good saves. He got the goal, the one goal he gave up against Phoenix, really unfortunate how that one happened. So Cody's been fantastic. And then obviously the penalty against San Antonio the other night. Cody looked unbeatable. I'll be honest with you. He looked unbeatable on Saturday. And, it's unlike in FIFA and eFootball, you can't really see which way the penalty taker is going to go in real life. So, unfortunately, he's made some big saves for us in penalty situations before. So I feel like Cody's performance has been great. I can't fault him. He hasn't really made any mistakes at the back. He's, like I said, his distribution's really well. He knows what Zach wants to do. He's familiar with the guys. He's able to get the ball out quickly and get things going. And, I think it makes a huge difference having a keeper that has those ability, the distribution, the quick play. I think it makes a huge difference between the top half of the championship and the bottom half of the championship.
I can relate to the backup goalkeeper feeling a little bit slighted, because that's how I kind of felt when Farr came in the playoffs last year. We had Mercado, a young guy that sat behind and played in a couple of when we played against Liga MX teams, the friendlies and stuff, he performed well. So I can understand that, but the quality of Mizell, the quality of Farr is why you bring them in. Even though it may ruffle the locker room a little bit per se, but I think for the better of the team, it's the right decision. Now, the question is how long is Mizell going to be here? And they said it's going to be a short loan.
That's the interesting part, because NYCFC's announcement said a season-long loan.
Oh,
yeah. If you went and looked at the release on their website, it says he'll be joining on a season-long loan. But New Mexico United said short-term, and the front office even confirmed to me that it was short-term, which is why he didn't play in the Cup. So they said that NYCFC did have the ability to recall him at any time. So, but there was no specified time frame in the loan deal.
How is Tambaksis, right?
Yeah.
What's the outlook on him coming back?
We don't know.
Is it a couple of weeks?
Or? So at the Open Cup against Las Vegas, I was told a few weeks to a month. And so that's been 3 weeks now, 2.5 weeks now. So I don't know. We haven't heard any updates. We don't know. At most clubs, as you know, are pretty tight-lipped.
Yes, obviously.
Yeah. And there are people complaining about that on Facebook the other day. I said, look, as someone who covers the club, like, we find out the day before, if we're lucky, and David Carl is the communications director, is very good about getting us information like that. And, of course, we can reach out to the club at any given point. We have the press conferences every week. And I told people, said, stuff can happen between the time we get those notes and then kick off the next day. We've seen it happen. We had a situation last year where Kalen Ryden woke up one day and felt the twinge in his back, just could not go. And so, it was a very late scratch for Kalen. And so trying to explain to people, like, they're like, oh, we want in order for people to be more critical of the formations, if they knew that people were hurt, if they knew that Suggs was hurt the other day. I'm like, well, what do you want? Like, there's only so much that the clubs give us. And then there's also the privacy of the players, So yeah, I think, I don't know how long the Cody deal is. I would expect it to be at least a couple more weeks. And then we'll see what happens from there. I just thought it was interesting to see the difference in the statements.
Language, yes.
Yeah. And so, because I know Owain, reporter covers Phoenix Rising, was making a big deal on Twitter about how people thought he was going to be in the cup and this, that, and the other. I'm like, who's making a big deal?
Well, I won't lie to you. I thought he would have been.
Yeah.
But I also understand that probably NYCFC didn't want to have him cup tied because we have a Nicky Hernandez from FC Dallas, and we played him during the Open Cup against Austin, and I was kind of surprised about that because not that I see him starting by any means, but basically if there were a rash of injuries, with FC Dallas, and FC Dallas needs him to play in the Open Cup, he can't.
Right.
So I understand maybe the agreement, hey, we'll loan you, but, Open Cup, he's probably not going to play just for the fact that, it ties him to them.
Yeah.
So you guys have a week off this week. You have a bye week.
Mm-hmm.
Good time to have a bye week. Are you guys nursing some injuries?
Yeah, I think it is. Obviously Alex is out, Josh Suggs is out. We don't have a time frame on Josh Suggs' return. We don't have a time frame on Kalen's return. We do know that he was in an Instagram post today in a walking boot. That was last week. So I don't know what the issue is. My guess is a stress fracture, just because of the fact that he is in a walking boot. Could be an ankle issue. We don't really know. The club hasn't really given us details on it, which isn't uncommon. And then Armando, the only other person listed on the report, obviously is still, I'd say, 2 months away. It'll be my guess, coming back from the ACL. So, but yeah, bye week coming up at this time, I think that's really good. And you guys
semi-bye week, because you have 2 games that you play next Wednesday, May 4th at Sacramento, and then you come home and play San Diego, which both are quality teams. I would say probably playoff quality for that here. So yeah, you get to break this. You get 10 days off, probably
10 days,
most likely.
Yeah. The Fighting Landers is going to be fun.
So and I know you guys will preview the SAC and the Loyal match next week, but your thoughts on so if you were kind of in charge for this 10-day period, what kind of changes are you hoping that Coach Prince puts through?
Oh boy! All right. If I get hired, if I was to get hired to manage New Mexico United for these 10 days, first of all, after the match Saturday night, I'm giving the guys Sunday, Monday off. Just give them 2 days off. Get them out. I did hear one bit of information the other day. So we were hoping to get a player on tonight. I told Jacob and Earl who was going to be. Obviously didn't pan out. I found out one piece of information as far as why that didn't happen. And I completely understand why, but give the guys a couple of days off, let them just rest, recuperate after, especially guys like Nico and Preston who played basically, Nico did 210 minutes in 8 days. Preston did, I think it was 210 to 270, somewhere in there. Give the guys a couple of days off, let them rest, recuperate, and then come out. And so there's two things that I want to see focused on in this 10-day break, basically. One, playing through the midfield. I want to see that. I want to see Chris Wehan. I want to see Sergio Rivas. I want to see Justin Portillo. I want to see Kristen Nava working through that midfield, finding ways to work through and get passes. If we're not going to play the long game, if we're not going to play the ball over the top, work that midfield, get them making runs, making crossing runs and different things like that to pull players out of position, pull defenders out of position, and then working to get that ball forward up to Nico, up to Preston. I want to see that, number one. Number two, I want to see set pieces. I want to see set pieces until they drop, because that's one of the areas that we've been lacking. Like, I don't feel like we've been poor defensively at any point this season. I feel like our guys, even with the injuries we've had, Will Seymour, Rosh, Austin, they've stepped in. They've done a fantastic job. Alexi has done a fantastic job. I felt like Austin got slighted yet last year. Should have been USL, first team player of the year. I felt like he should have been in there, or team of the year, I should say. But yeah, I want to see set pieces. I want to see a lot of set piece defending. So yeah, those are the two things that I'm going to focus on. Obviously, going through the first, working the ball through the midfield with Bees and those guys creating opportunities, the chances are going to fall. Create more opportunities, create more high quality opportunities, and that's something we've talked about a lot. Talked about earlier in the show. When you create quality opportunities and not half chances and things like that, you're gonna get more looks at goal. You're gonna see more shots fall. So that's what I want to see. Obviously, hopefully we get some guys back and get healthy. And that's the case, if Alex does come back, do we keep Cody for an extra match or two? But other than that, I want to see those things focused on, because that's where our weaknesses are right now.
It'll be interesting because I think that New Mexico's in kind of that interesting spot just with their schedule, to where you look at it, they're already 10 points out from first place.
Yeah.
Now they're only 1 point out from the 7th slot. So, and RGV's played an extra game. So they're not in poor position, but you don't, going to Sacramento is not easy. Who's in 6th with 10 points, same matches played. And then San Diego, 8 matches played at 16 points. To me's 5 wins, 2 losses, 1 draw, has been quality, and one of their losses was to Louisville City in a heavily rotated lineup as they were trying to, prepare for the Galaxy in the Open Cup.
Mm-hmm.
To me, those are, those are key matches to where you hope they at least get 3 points out of it. But, out of those 2 matches, and I know you guys will go into it much deeper next week, but as just a fan, of the league here, for New Mexico, it's you look at the schedule and then what's coming up. You've got to start putting some points on the board now. Like I said here, it's still early. There's still a lot left in the season, but it's been my experience, where you don't want to drop too far behind on there. And I do think, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 are just going to, it's going to be tight all year.
Yeah.
But I know going in, New Mexico had higher expectations than just sneaking into the playoffs.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And finding points the rest of the way is going to be interesting. You look at the rest of the schedule. I think RGV's. I mean, there are some clubs that are beatable.
Correct.
out there. Do I think Colorado and San Diego, do I think some of these clubs maintain their form? I don't think Las Vegas does. We talked about it a little bit over the weekend. If LAFC comes in and starts, swooping for players, specifically Danny Trejo, what happens to Las Vegas? Does Sacramento have enough? I don't think Colorado maintains. I could be wrong. I
disagree with Colorado. I think they're a more balanced team this year.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not as high flying scoring wise. And like, Haji Berry, I think he got his first goal this year, this last week here. So they're a lot more balanced. San Diego, I think, is a lot more balanced. Rising, they're still a quality team. I'm not a big Sacramento fan.
Mm-hmm.
I know USL Tactics John is. I know they got Rodrigo Lopez back, who came back, was a kingpin for RGV last year and is back with Sacramento. RGV, they keep saying that they've got more players coming, that they're waiting for visa issues. They're an interesting team that I wonder if second half is going to be much better.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of El Paso this year. Orange County struggling. I'm not sure what to make of the defending champs and Galaxy and Roots. And sorry, Sam Gleadle, but I'm not a big fan of Monterey Bay, through here. So I'm kind of interested to see what San Antonio does with Monterey Bay, if they kind of rotate the lineup a little bit, just because they only used one sub last week. And that was after playing 120 minutes against, against Austin FC, and a 90-minute match against El Paso the Saturday before. So,
yeah, I agree with you about Phoenix. And I honestly, like, so we put out a post-match tweet after the Open Cup match, and one of the Phoenix Rising supporters basically said that we were calling them a quality side to make us feel better about ourselves. Like, Phoenix is, I've never said Phoenix is not a quality side. Are they the
Phoenix
same?
Phoenix is a great regular season club. It's the postseason that they struggle at, where defense matters.
Yeah,
history says that.
Yeah, I don't think they're the same quality as they've been the past couple of years, but they are a quality side. They're a good side. I've never said that they weren't. So I think they're a club that I think is going to make contention. But yeah, I agree with you with pretty much everything you said there. Monterey Bay, who knows what's going to happen out there. I know they haven't played a game at home, but El Paso just has no clue what they're doing. They're just, that train keeps going backwards off the cliff. Oakland Roots are unbeaten, but they've only won once. So, I don't know, man. Like, there's just so much out there. And I wanted to ask you about Saturday against Monterey Bay, 7th match in 28 days for San Antonio. You mentioned possibly seeing some club rotation out there, especially with how congested the schedule has been for you guys. Like, how much rotation do you think there will be? And even with that, do you think Monterey could potentially sneak a point out of this?
Could they? Yes.
Okay.
Because they're still a USL championship team.
Well, I mean, when you buy the rights to a franchise.
So Monterey Bay reminds me of the Roots last year, where they had the slow start to adjust, weren't playing at home, a lot of travel. I know they've got a thin roster. I know they've had some injuries. They actually get a home game next week. They'll have their first home match, I think, is after ours. Could they get a win? Sure. Because no offense for San Antonio, last week was probably one of the most impressive weeks. They beat El Paso at home, they beat Austin FC at home, and they won in New Mexico. If you would have told me that San Antonio was going to get 9 points, win all three, I thought they would beat El Paso, because I don't rate El Paso very highly. I Austin FC, I thought it's an MLS club, but just with the how personal that match was, it wouldn't shock me if San Antonio won. Now MLS, they're in it. Austin FC is obviously a quality MLS team, and they're showing that in the standings. I think they're second in the West right now, early in the season. But just how personal that was, I think that was there. That's why I made the comment to AJ on the trip over. I was like, after they got that win against Austin, you kind of wondered, how much, number one, how much they had left in the tank and how much emotion that came. But they came out with, matched the intensity of New Mexico and was able to, sneak away with all 3 points. My worry is this is that perfect trap game where you're coming off a real high. You've got kind of a week to settle. Next week, San Antonio plays at Phoenix, plays at Houston Dynamo in the Open Cup, and then the following Saturday plays at the Miami FC, all on the road. So if there's going to be a match, which you're going to do a little bit of match rotation or roster rotation, it's the Monterey Bay one. Against Rising, if they lose, I would say, hey, if you get a tie, it's fine. But then you lose the tiebreakers to Phoenix Rising because the first one's head-to-head. So they've already got, the win over us. So if we can go in and snatch a point, we'd actually have to win by, win by 2 goal, like a 2-0 match. And then that puts, points per game in conference opponents. If not, Rising wins the tiebreaker. So that's one of the things that, and I know it's crazy to say, hey, in in April, May timeframe, worrying about tiebreakers, but it matters. It's, we've seen playoff positions, being able to host compared to playing on the road you can make a huge difference. And, the more victories you can get. And, one of the worrying things that for San Antonio is they're getting the 3 points. But if in the second half, if their defense starts to leak, or if they get, injuries, because of the minutes that they're playing the players, if they lose matches in the second half, they start losing these tiebreakers. Tiebreakers are gonna come into play at some point during the season, especially when it comes to the playoffs. And that's my concern for New Mexico at this point, especially dropping points at home. Is if and it's like what we talked about. If you can get the 3 points at home and then draw one on the road, you're good.
Yeah.
But it's losing late to OC and Oakland, 90 plus minutes, I think, late goals like that could make a determination on whether you're hosting in that first round or whether you're on the road.
Yeah, the schedule is a really interesting thing to see, and I want to ask you this too, real quick. So you mentioned you've got Rising next weekend on the 7th. We also have Rising in May. Both of our clubs are getting Rising out of the way early this season. We actually still have an unscheduled date against Los Dos. So the schedule looks a little funky this year. Normally we kind of see it spread out at least a little bit more. What do you think about getting a club like Rising out of the way so fast? Do you think it helps your club do that, or do you think it's better to have that test later in the season when you're gearing up for that playoff run?
I'd rather get the tough tests over early, and especially for a Rising club. Generally speaking, they're more beatable earlier in the year than they are towards the end of the year, and along those lines. But whenever you play Rising, especially in Phoenix, it's always a challenge. It's to me, like I said, it's probably Phoenix and New Mexico out west. And I haven't been to the new Colorado Springs place, new stadium. I haven't been there. To me, the fans in Phoenix and the fans in New Mexico are probably the 2 toughest places, as a San Antonio fan, to go on the road to.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can knock those out early, and especially if you can, let's say between the two split points, get 6 out of the 12 points. If you can walk away kind of, where you're not losing points to them, then I think that's an advantage. But later in the year, teams change though. That's Rising is a team that we've seen that will make additions to make sure that they get that late push. And I guess that's the question for New Mexico is, are they a team that will make those adjustments? I don't know if last year they kind of did. They brought in, and I know we had discussions on this, on did they do the right thing by bringing in some of the older New Mexico United players, as opposed to kind of cycling in some some new blood along those lines. And that may be why there's you have Coach Prince now and along those lines. So I think it'll be interesting to see what adjustments New Mexico does. San Antonio has the history where if they need something in addition to help push them over, they will go out and get it.
Yeah.
Sacramento, I think, is like that. San Diego has shown that. Colorado Springs, I think, will show that. To me, I don't think RGV is. I don't think the Lights are. El Paso, like I said here, I'm on the fence on El Paso. New Mexico is the one to me where I don't know if I've seen that to where they've really gone out and got that it player that they needed to get.
Yeah, last year was the first time we'd ever made any sort of mid-season roster move, and I think talking with Peter, talking with the ownership group, they come across as committed, like they want to win.
Oh, they are committed.
And so they're willing. I think we've shown this offseason, especially, they're willing to splash some cash to bring some guys in. Preston with Nico, with I assume there's some sort of financial part to Cody's loan that they're paying for, and so like they're willing to put the cash out there. But do they, like you said, do they make those mid-season or late season moves? I think they do this year. I think they saw last year just how big of a difference that can make. Now, obviously, they're kind of running out of former New Mexico United players to bring back in. Now, I think bringing in Salim Muhammad last year were the right moves for that time. Probably should have done a little bit sooner. Obviously we had that stretch last year. We didn't have favorable results, but I think it was the right move last year. I think this year we do see a couple moves, probably around July, August, to bring some.
Do you think they need to make moves sooner than that? Because you mentioned the midfield's kind of a weakness right now.
Yeah.
Is if they and it's all about scouting, being able to find the right piece. Could you see them? Obviously, they made the move for Mizell, and part of that was probably need.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said here, we're 7-8 games into the season, for 6 to 8 games, and they're 10 points out from the top of the division. And the only reason why I mention that is, because I know you guys have talked about it. I know, New Mexico, on their social media posts that have put a more emphasis that they want to have a better season, result wise in the standings. And I'm not saying winning it all, but they don't want to be sneaking into the playoffs at 7-6. I'm assuming the goal for them is to host a playoff game. Because that's special, like I said here, it's the lab on a playoff game would just, it would be intense. It was special when we were there this past weekend, but you can't tell me the city of Albuquerque would not be buzzing to be able to host a playoff game.
Oh yeah, no, we absolutely would. I think it would be absolutely huge for the club. And given the timing of the USL playoffs, we mentioned earlier, obviously the Ice Hopes wouldn't be playing at that point.
Most likely.
Yeah, because they don't. Well, I mean, they're done at the end of September, or so
unless they make the playoffs, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Because I would hate to go back to UNM especially for a playoff match, because I mean we had 11, almost 11,500 people on Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
I mean we've gotten the lab to over 15,000, so I couldn't imagine the playoff atmosphere if we were to host a match. And I think we do need to sign someone a little bit sooner. I would say probably start looking in May, and try to line someone up in May and June. That way they do have time to come in and gel, especially since there are guys that won't be familiar with the club. I mean, David Estrada is gone. David Najim is not coming back. Basically, it's gonna have to be a fresh face, someone who doesn't know Zach's system. Someone's gonna need time to gel with the players. So, yeah, if they do sign something, it needs to be sooner. But I definitely think it's something that's on their radar this year more so than in the past. Because the midfield needs some work. We're getting a little thin at defense, but with the injury situation, as that clears up, it's going to get better. I think Radio Vuka could be one of the best left backs in the league. We've seen him do well in his limited appearances so far. So, I think I think the pieces are nearly complete, because we have dynamic forwards. We need better playmakers in the middle of the field to help facilitate that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's got to happen sooner. And I think it would be a massive disappointment this year, more so than last year, if we didn't make the playoffs.
Because what is the playoff structure? So the first seed gets a bye.
Mm-hmm.
So it'd be 2 versus 7 then, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Which right now would be,
San Antonio
and RGV. So
I don't think RGV stays in it, but I think to me the current pace on how New Mexico is, they're heading for that 6th or 7th slot.
Yeah.
Which getting into the playoffs is there, and unfortunately for San Antonio, as we've seen, New Mexico has came into our place during the playoffs and pulled out the win. We can discuss whether it was a handball or not. Still
show me definitive proof that it was a handball, and I will say it was a handball.
So that's going to be one of those where it's depending on if you liked yellow or black, or yellow or red, I guess, because you guys also have black in yours. Is how you're going to view that.
Yeah, that's one of the things that USL has got to get right is penalties.
MLS can't get it. MLS can't get it right, as well as we saw with the Dynamo and FC Dallas were. So, but yeah, it is. One thing that I wanted to ask you, the PK. Yeah. Did you think I thought it was, because contact started in the box. It was on the line. I thought it was a valid PK. Now, obviously, when I was standing up and yelling in the stands and waving my flag, I pinpointed my wife. I'm like, look, that's me.
Yeah.
She did what they said, what everybody in the crowd said was, sit down.
Yeah.
But your thoughts on the PK? I know there were some rumblings in the stands about the referee, which unlike last year, he wasn't super card happy, which I was kind of shocked about. I think I thought we had more cards than what we ended up with, but he only reported 2 cards. I thought for a fact that we had more than 2 cards, but I'll take the 2 cards.
Yeah, you guys had 2, we had 5. So, Radchuk had an interesting match. And I always hate to talk about the referees, but this is a guy that obviously last year 14 yellows and then a red, mm-hmm. Which was very close to a world record. So, he it was very interesting to see what happened. And he started calling some really ticky-tack stuff there in the second half. And then there were other things that he wasn't calling that seemed to be more.
The consistency drove me crazy.
Yeah. And there's just no consistency there. And then, and as far as the penalty goes, from my perspective, watching it, live and then looking at the replays, it looked to me like, so the ball was outside of the box. Dillon, I think it was Dillon that drew the foul, right?
Mm-hmm.
Dillon's right foot was inside the box, but he was outside the box. And so the contact started outside, and I think it was a silly foul. It was silly contact to be making in any case. But I felt like it wasn't a penalty just because when I look at it, where the contact started, because they were going at it and they had contact outside the box, but when he went down, his foot was inside. So I feel like if you called it the other way, if he had called it, no penalty, I feel like the San Antonio fan base is going to be upset. You call it a penalty, New Mexico fan base is going to be. It's one of those calls that it's so hard to make.
Here's my issue with it.
Mm-hmm.
When watching the replay, his first instinct was pointing to the spot.
Yeah.
And then he changed it to but then he was like, hey, it was outside the box. And then he went and talked to the AR.
Yeah.
That to me was the part that drove me crazy. Is I think contact started in the box. So and like I said here, obviously I don't have yellow and black glasses on, so I'm seeing it from a different perspective, obviously. Yeah. So I thought San Antonio fans probably like, yes, that was the correct call. But I think one of the biggest, and I'm not trying to dismiss Mr. Radchuk at all or anything along those lines, but that inconsistent was on that call that he did was very inconsistent because he pointed towards the PK. But his actions showed, hey, it was a foul outside the box. And I think that led to the confusion, both for the players on the pitch, because when it initially happened, San Antonio, New Mexico players both were like, what are you calling?
Yeah.
It's one of those, whatever he calls, neither fan base is going to be happy. It just, it's on that line. You can argue whether New Mexico should or shouldn't have, made the foul. They did foul. The question is with it that close to the line. Unfortunately, you open yourself up to that call. And to me, I just wish he would have been a little bit more confident in what decision that he made initially. I was happy that he had the discussion with the AR. I think that, and I know you're working on your referee licenses. That's what he's supposed to do.
Yeah.
So
be confident in your decisions and stick by them.
and if you do have some questions, talk, which I had no problem him doing. It's just that inconsistency, through the match, that drove all fans crazy.
Yeah.
For that here. So, but my final comment, like I said here, one, like I said here, you guys have a class owner with Peter. We saw him after the match, and he was gracious. And there was 4 of us that made the trip up. He was pure class. But even the fans, like I said here, it was one of the things that I liked here, and I tweeted about it, is at least in section 119, with all the fans that we're sitting next to, it seemed like a family reunion among, New Mexico fans where, everybody's, hey, welcome by. Hey, how are you doing? How's the kids? Along those lines, you could tell a lot of them had club things. So that was pretty cool. But just on some of the banter, one of the funniest things was, it happened on Collier's shot that Mizell saved. And, one of the guys, from behind me was kind of like, see, San Antonio can't even, can't score a goal. And I responded back to him. I was like, well, at least we can get it on frame. He's like, we did the fist bump because he's like, that that was a good one. We were struggling offensively, to convert our chances, and he called us out. But like I said here, as a away fan, and I know Rising fans give you guys a lot of shit, and I give you some grief, New Mexico fans online. But the game day experience, like I said, was awesome, and like I said, it's something that if the games can be on a Saturday again, we'll try to make the trip. Although it is a long trip, and gas at $4 something a gallon was a little bit tough to swallow.
At least I think at least it was a little bit cheaper over the weekend here. I think it was like $3.89 or something over the weekend. But
but when you get out to West Texas and stuff, it was like I think we paid $4.18 at one stop, and it was just like
I know when I went down to El Paso for that match, it was right around there's like 409, 413, something like that. I was like, this is ridiculous, because I made it down and back to Las Cruces before I had to get gas. So but yeah, I think 119, I think it's a lot of support. I think that's a lot of season ticket holders over in that area. But yeah, I watch. I haven't been to two. I have the only away match I've been to is El Paso, and I think us, El Paso, Phoenix, and you guys, and all have fantastic like game day atmospheres.
Colorado Springs is in there now too with their new. I haven't been there, but I've heard their new stadium. It just a game day environment. With the Trailheads as their supporters group. Yeah. It's on my bucket list. I know San Antonio plays them in June, and tentatively we're scheduled to go up. Although there might be some things that pop up health wise here that we may have to adjust that. But to me, like I said, Colorado Springs, that Southwest area, like I said here, I'm just real passionate fan bases, and to me. And no disrespect to our California friends, but it's not the same out in California. It's just not.
No, I agree with that, and I know that I don't generally jump in on a whole lot of the banter. Like I know I've kind of poked at El Paso a little bit this year, especially
Well, it's fun. They're down.
It's fun, But I typically don't go back and forth with a whole bunch of people on it, and I know I kind of took exception to what the Striker Texas said about United being an inferior club after beating El Paso.
Yes, I pointed that out to you.
Yeah, you did. And I was like, wait a minute, what? It just didn't make a whole lot of sense, but and I know, Phoenix loves to get on us, El Paso loves to get on us, and like I said, I don't partake, but I think it's fantastic. I think there are some people that do go a little too far.
On both sides.
It's on both sides.
On both sides, yeah.
I definitely, I will definitely 100% agree with that. There are some people on both sides that take it too far, but as long as it's good natured, whatever, and you're not pulling what that Houston Dynamo podcast did.
That was bad. That was bad.
But yeah, you talk about Peter. Peter's fantastic. I love talking to Peter. We've had him on the show a couple times. I've done some one-on-one stuff with him, and before every match, he's down on the field, he's talking to people, he's walking around the stadium talking to folks, he's out at the tailgates, he's around, he's always at the office. Like if you stop in and want to talk to like, Peter will come down and talk to you. Like, he comes in the press box, he greets everybody, every single time up there, he comes, hey man, how you doing? Fist bump, shake, hug, and it's like, so let's get out there, let's get the points. And obviously, he gives us the hashtag Pete Leaks every now and then. So, but Peter, the entire ownership group, Peter, Ron, the front office folks, they are so incredibly passionate about this game, about this club, about this city, and like you see it in the way that they interact with everybody. And even when traveling supporters like yourself, or even the El Paso or Phoenix folks come in, like they're more than willing to go out and talk to them and hang out with them and stuff like that. And so. It's a great thing to see, So, and I think they're ambassadors for the sport and for the club and what they want to do. And then just everything, through the Somos Unidos Foundation. And, I know that, the club announced today, they're doing tryouts for the U23s. And someone tried to give them shit for charging for tryouts. It's $99 to come out and try out for the U23s. You get like some gear and like a match ticket and some other shit too. And like, that's a semi-pro club. They're not an academy, so it's not fully funded, So like people trying to give them crap for charging people to come out and try out. I'm like, well, that's not uncommon.
Yeah.
Especially for semi-pro clubs. So,
Plus the thing that you have to look at is if you perform well enough, you could get moved up to the first team.
Oh yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And we've all and we cringe about it as fans, but the thing that I think as fans that we have to understand is this is a business. As much as we love that it's a game, this is a major business. San Antonio, charges for tryouts. RGV does. Everybody charges for tryouts. Now you could argue a semi-pro for that here, and I think if it was a quote unquote traditional semi-pro team, yeah, you may not see it, may not see $100, but I think even for some of them, they do, just because that's a point of revenue that they can have to bring in. Plus, typically, if I'm assuming New Mexico United is going to be paying for player registrations and kits and all that type of stuff. So, yeah, it's a small fee to try it, try out, and you may or may not make it. But the plus side to be able to do is, number one, if you can get minutes and you can excel, you've got kind of that secondary pipeline, especially, if New Mexico United, gets their academy up and running and starts to see it cycle through to where maybe you get some fringe level players, let's say like for Nava, if he needs minutes to be able to go down to it's a USL 2 team, right? Is my understanding.
Yeah.
Where they play for a couple of months during the year. And this might be a discussion for a different day, depending on what the new NCAA rules are. That may be changing going forward as well, as far as how USL League 2 operates. If college goes to a more fuller schedule, that matches, the entire year. So.
Yeah. And talking about the U23s, I mean, their schedule kicks off in a month, and so one of the things they're doing, you talk about, the club paying for registration and kits and all that kind of stuff. The club is also going to be featuring the U23s around the state. They're going to be playing in different locations around the state to showcase the U23s. So like they're going to play in Roswell. They're going to play at Mesa del Sol, which is right down the road here. They're going to play up in Santa Fe. They're going to play in Taos. So they're going to be all over the place. So you've also got travel and lodging and things like that. I mean, granted, there's probably not going to be a whole lot of lodging, but it's a great opportunity. And I think this is one of the areas that USL is excelling, because you see more clubs starting up academies. You see more clubs getting involved with League 1, League 2. You mentioned Christian Nava. Nava's already been signed to a professional contract at the age of 17. We've got Armando Zarate, who was also signed. He's in there. We haven't seen him feature with the first team club, but he's in there training. The academy kids are training with the first team. They're getting, and when they're not, they're getting developmental help, from guys like David Estrada, from Devin Sandoval, and so it's this giant opportunity. And I imagine the U23s will be involved in that as well, but yeah, it's just the growth of the sport. And I think, like I said, USL excels over MLS, in my opinion. And as far as all the other, Division 2, Division 3 prospects, Nisa, who are absolute shit show right now, the latest nonsense from AC Syracuse, I don't see Nisa ever becoming what USL is. I don't see NPSL, UPSL, EP. I don't see any of them ever reaching the level that USL is at. And maybe it comes to a point where they all just eventually just become feeder leagues. If NISA can't be financially feasible, there's a very real chance that NISA, folds, which would, be another growth opportunity for USL, as provided, ownership can continue to grow and be, find a way to become financially stable. But it's an exciting time for USL, exciting time for soccer. And, I can't wait to see what happens, in the coming months and years with this. So.
Yeah, I hope NISA doesn't, because I think they help push USL.
Mm-hmm.
I know they got some growing pains to go through, but it'll be interesting with NISA. But it's getting late for me, my friend.
Yes, sir.
So I know we've been doing this for a little while. We went a full match. So
yeah. Yeah. So I appreciate you being here. We've talked about, you're always welcome on the show. You've invited yourself on the show. So and we love having you on. You're a fantastic friend of the show. You're an ambassador for the sport, for San Antonio soccer. So for the folks that don't, if for some reason they don't know you, that tell a little bit about the other podcasts that you do and where they can find those.
Yeah, so the podcast that I do mainly is the SA Soccer Roundtable. We cover San Antonio FC, obviously. We're going to start picking up. We have now two UWS teams, the SA Runners and the San Antonio Athenians for that here. So we're going to start picking up coverage on them as they kick off. I want to say probably about the same time as your U23 team does for that here. High school coverage, although that's kind of wrapped up here. But really, we try to talk about all things San Antonio soccer. And like I said here, it's SATX Soccer is the Twitter handle. Obviously, if you follow me, it's at Ram and Call, and I'm very shy and bashful. I don't say anything on Twitter, social media. I share my opinions probably a little bit too much. I probably listen to way too many podcasts and try to help promote as much as I can through there. I think I still have it pinned on my Twitter page, but I created a USL guide for USL Championship, League One, and NISA on podcasts for that here. So I believe I have that pinned. If not, I'll go through and make sure it is pinned up. If you obviously listen to Somos Mas for that here, but if you want to hear about a rival that you're going to be facing, typically you can go on there and listen. And there's just quality podcasts out there. I know Seriously Loco is one of the favorite ones that I have. I know they speak about the team that you guys dislike the most. But like I said here, Phil and Mika do a wonderful job, just like you guys do. So proud to kind of help in any way I can to the community, and just like you do, kind of help grow the game, the way that I can. Obviously, I wasn't blessed with blazing speed or soccer ability, so I can talk, and I typically fairly educated. Hot takes, sometimes not so much, but I think majority of the time I can at least explain them halfway decent.
Yeah, there we go. Well, there you have it, folks. That's going to do it for Harry and myself. As he said, follow him over on Twitter at Ramacall. Follow at SATX Soccer for his other podcasts, and for more just USL takes, MLS takes, and political takes as well. I know you've had some interesting.
I try not to, but every once in a while it slips through.
I've
tried, but sometimes. I know the big one today is the waiving of student loans, but we won't delve into that conversation. But
with Governor Abbott, it's kind of hard not to. So
we're not Florida, although it's close.
Yeah. Yep. All right, folks. That's going to do it for us. For Harry, for myself, Jacob and Earl, who are not here tonight. Thank you guys so much for watching, listening, and we'll see you guys next time.